Good evening, I'm Pat Miles. We want to remind you that we will be returning to our studios for a live town meeting discussion following the 10 p.m. report.
Television, Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Welcoming you to another edition of WCCO's Electronic Town Meeting. This is a chance for us from time to time to use our telephones and our television sets to talk with one another about some of the significant issues of our time. If you were with us earlier this evening for the Moore Report documentary, Fear and Present Danger, you are aware that our discussion tonight concerns crime and the fears and reactions it has brought about in all of us. Stop and think for just a moment. How many of you have been the victim of a crime recently? Or in the past, a bike stolen, your home broken into, your business burglarized? Or if not yourself personally, what about a neighbor or a friend, a relative? The experts tell us that so many of us have either been victims of crime or know someone who has, that our fear of crime is rising at an alarming rate. Much has been written about the cause of crime, the myriad causes. For years, we've been looking for a solution or solutions, yet the crime rate continues to rise. We need some fresh ideas, and as one step toward that tonight, we have brought to our studio a panel of guests who have widely divergent ideas on the causes and the cures of crime. And as our custom, we invite you at home to join in this discussion. Pat Miles with us this evening to take your telephone calls to see that your questions are answered. But before we get to that, let's meet our panel individually. On my right is Mr. Ron Edwards, currently president of the Minneapolis Urban League. Mr. Edwards has been involved in several crime-related committees in this community, including the Hennepin County Sentencing Task Force. Next is Kurt Saxon, whom we met earlier in the documentary. Mr. Saxon, a survivalist, has authored several books on that subject, preaching a very strong brand of self-protection against the criminal elements in our society. Mr. Curtis Sleva, our next panelist, takes a widely different approach to crime. Following some harrowing experiences riding the subways in the Bronx in New York City, he formed the Guardian Angels, a citizens protection group which patrols high-crime neighborhoods and subways in New York. And finally, we have Anthony Boza, chief of the Minneapolis Police Department, of whom you also saw a great deal on their documentary. Mr. Boza brings to us a wide range of police experience, spending 25 years coming up through the ranks of the New York City Police Force, from patrolman to assistant chief, before coming to Minneapolis. Thus, our panel. Now, we should like to hear from you. Our phone lines are open. Pat is here to take your calls. Pat?
That's right, Dave. And of course, a key part of this program is participation, your participation, a key element. We want to hear your concerns, your questions, and we'd like your comments tonight. To do that, we ask you to please phone us. The number is 989-2444. If you live in the metropolitan area, that's the number, 989-2444. Outstate, you may call us collect at area code 612-330-2688. I'm going to repeat the numbers one more time, so if you have a pencil, write them down. In the metropolitan area, the number is 989-2444. Outstate, area code 612-330-2688. We're going to begin with a phone call from one of our viewers who saw the documentary. Go ahead, you're on the air.
Yeah, I live in St. Paul. I own a house. which I purchased, rehabilitated. The day we moved in, 3 hours later, we were broken into. We caught them, and the cops helped us in getting them convicted. The second time was when we were on vacation. They broke in and they stole $10,000 worth of stuff, all of which is irreplaceable. Stuff they stole was expensive violins, clocks, all of our appliances, all of my jewelry, everything was gone. And it's happened twice since. Now, I live near Selby Dale. I didn't know what I was getting into when I bought this house. The real estate agent didn't tell us. What I have found is I live in a war zone. I have bars on all of my windows. I have solid core oak doors. I have 4 locks on every door. And I'm terrified. I don't know what the hell to do. And I have found that there is nothing I can do. I come home and I expect to be broken into again because we've tried everything. We've kicked the doors, everything. And the next thing I think they're going to blow the place, use dynamite or something. And I don't know what it is. You can't live in your own home without someone trying to break in and steal it. Steal everything you have that I've worked all of my life to get.
We couldn't show this over to New York.
We have a caller on the air right now who wants to respond. Go ahead with your question.
Yes. The first call of the meeting had stated the problems of his home and what he should do, and the answer was given that just to move out. What do you do if you can't move out? I'm sure there are a lot of people in this country who can't afford to move.
Good question. Thank you.
That was Mr. Saxon's answer.
Yes.
Move out.
Well, my answer was move out, and you can say, well, what if you can't move out? Well, you must know something about all the cataclysms that's taken place in the last few years. You must have seen these refugees who couldn't move out, but there they are moving out with their baby carriages piled high with their pitiful little goods that they can salvage. You can move out if you want to stay alive, unless you want to be one of those pathetic refugees or unless you want to be dead. If you plain simply will not move, then just eat, drink, and be merry because you've had it.
Will someone answer the question then if you simply cannot move out, because it never has really been satisfactorily answered about a person who is afraid to go home and simply for whatever reasons, Mr. Saxon, does not have the wherewithal to move out. Is there an answer? And I think, as I said before, if we can answer that problem, maybe we can adjourn the panel. I don't know. Is there an answer?
We'd love to be adjourned.
Well, survivalism is an individual thing. The masses will not survive. Only the individuals will, and hopefully the foresighted, courageous, intelligent ones will, like they did during the Middle Ages, during the plague, like the best ones survived the fall of Rome, and so on. Civilizations have been rising and falling even since before written history, and this one is about to go the same as the others, and it's arrogance to the point of paranoia to realize that it happens to everybody else throughout history but can't happen to this society.
I have a feeling that Kurt sees a lot of people who can't move out in the Bronx area.
Well, I can't really argue that point at all because people are trapped in an environment. I think we should really talk with consciousness raising, as the commissioner brought up. I've seen a lot of these conscious raising meetings where we get police, community people, and concerned citizens, and in essence, we perpetrate fear at these meetings. We have the police officer who's looked up to as the expert, and he's telling the people about the new locks that they can put on the doors, the bars on the windows, not to go downtown unless they go in a group, the new senior citizen bus service that brings the senior citizens downtown as a group and brings them back. And yet, to me, all it's doing is perpetrating the fear. I think as representatives of our city government, people that we elect, and the police officer obviously is the only person we can get in contact with. I know I can't get in touch with my mayor, I can't get in touch with my police commissioner, but the cop on the beat is that extension of city government, should be out there preaching the offensive philosophy. Get involved, do it, don't worry.
Are they preaching that?
No. What they're saying is leave it up to us. Call it in. Don't get involved. Don't physically get involved. We have lawyers and graduates of major universities around the country, brainiacs, who tell us that legally don't get involved because the court system will press civil litigation against you. And so what we're doing is churning up this fear so that people are looking around, they're feeling boxed in, isolated, and in essence, as I stated once again before, we have created a situation where we're hostages in our own homes. And I don't care if you're out in the boondocks of Arkansas, or you're in the vestiges of the worst deteriorated areas of the South Bronx, you're just as much a hostage there because with all the guns that I saw in that program, you're a hostage just as well as I'm a hostage.
I bought most of my guns in California.
I'm sick and tired of it, and I think it's high time that we in the city and those in the rural areas start working together to protect one another and not make it a matter of against those who don't have versus those who do have.
Well, let me make a point here. I was watching a segment on you and your group, and one part of it showed a little old lady with a hat pin and several other elderly people, and they talked about how they were attacked, and they turned on their attackers, and they put them to rout. So if you can't get out, steel yourself to turning on them like the wolves they are. Well, give them what they give, and even worse.
Well, our philosophy isn't so much necessarily that we hang them from a pole, but that as a group, as a psychological force of people together, you can control the situation. When you look at it, and I think maybe the chief would agree, you only really have a handful of hardened criminals who are dominating the situation. Most of the people are hardworking, honest people who don't go around stealing from one another, and yet a handful, a pocket full of people who are hardened, personally involved with criminal activity since the very age of when they were young, and these are the people who basically are calling the shots and keep us in fear. But when you look at it in terms of numbers, it's a very small minority. And I don't mean minority because of minority peoples, I mean a very small minority of the population, period, that has us in mortal fear.
Well, then in your situation, what you have to do is to raise their courage so that they'll stop acting like sheep.
But everything we hear is that you should not fight back, because if you do, you'll probably be killed.
Well, I would rather fight back and get killed than get killed by some scum who got what he wanted without a fight.
May I offer a lay answer to the lady who called in, and also relative to the very first recall about the person who is afraid to go home? It seems to me the wise thing to do, number one, know your neighbor. If you're in an apartment building, know who those people are. Get in contact with them, talk with them, make yourself known to them, get their telephone numbers. And I don't think you necessarily have to arm yourselves against these people. But how many people who live in an apartment building don't know the person who lives across the hall? They may see them when they go out to get the morning paper or the milk bottle in the morning, milk carton in the morning.
Most of them, now you made a good point there, but I was raised in New York and Chicago, and I didn't know my neighbors either. And then I went to Arkansas as a child for a few years, and then everybody there, well, at least in the smaller towns in Arkansas, you say hello to just about anybody you meet because it's a close neighbor, more or less. You either know people by sight or by name. And then I went back to Chicago. And then when I would say hello to somebody, they'd act like I was nuts. I was invading their privacy. And people in the cities think that if you make any sort of overture, you're somehow on the make. They're suspicious if you... Well, it's like any policeman will tell you the difference between a rural area and a metropolitan area. You don't expect to know the average person that you meet walking down a city street, and so you avoid eye contact. But there is a good possibility that you will recognize someone you meet in a small town, and so you look and you even say hello, even if you haven't met him. So it's easy to see how people in the next apartment don't know you, because if you talk to them, then they're going to think, well, you want to borrow something, or you want to case the joint and rip them off later, or something.
That barrier
They're
can be
paranoid.
broken, I think.
Well,
that's a
I hope so,
generalization
but I don't have to bother with that problem.
One of the things, Dave, that you're going to have to do, I think we've all said it in different kinds of ways, is I don't think that the majority of Americans that we're all asking, or a majority of Metropolitans that we're all asking to create and have this new consciousness and have this involvement, that people have really been convinced that their involvement, their participation really makes the difference. And people are going to have to be shown that their participation and their involvement makes the difference. And an example of that was what happened in California just the other day, that the 73-year-old school teacher who came home, found the guys taking 2 TV sets out of her house, took after them, plummeted them, in fact held them for the police, and her neighbors cheered. But really her neighbors were hypocrites, because they had observed the burglarizing and the whole thing of her house. They cheered her, they applauded her, she was their champion, but what in essence they were saying, better you than me, if in fact you had been killed.
Do you think they will act when that kind of thing should happen?
Well, I think what you're looking at is that if you found 1 or 2 people who observed and were aware in that particular block or that particular community that woman's involvement made the difference, you probably come a long way.
Probably going to change a lot of attitudes there.
Well,
We've got to take a break. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We'll come back to you, Kurt, as soon as we do. Just a moment.
An all-pro driving a Subaru? Why not? I'm driving one, and in my book, Subarus are all-pro. Front-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, and fuel economy at a price you can't beat. And right now, your 3 all-pro Twin Cities Subaru dealers are offering record-setting inventories and prices you can't refuse. Now's the time to buy Subaru at your 3 Twin Cities Subaru dealers because model and color selection is the greatest. And believe me, you'll make a great catch.
Start at the dawn of